time out here except when I go in to do a show because I've got everything I need here. I change clothes, take a shower, whatever.
Legendary musician and songwriter Willie Nelson is renowned for his unique voice and his capacity to master and blend a variety of musical genres. Willie has had a big influence on music as a founding member of the Highwaymen, a country ensemble that includes artists like Kristofferson. But his path wasn't always straightforward. He gradually rose to fame despite a difficult start. Recently, he praised Chris, calling him one of the greatest songwriters he has ever encountered. He did, however, reveal a depressing detail about Chris which upsets band fans. What is the awful truth then? Is it personal or has it to do with the Highwaymen? Watch this video to discover more about the heartfelt confession made by 90-year-old Willie Nelson. Let's take a step back and examine Willie Nelson's early life and career, starting with the foundations of a legend before we dive into this bombshell. Ira Doyle Nelson and Merle Marie Greenhall welcomed Willie Hugh Nelson into the world on April 29, 1933 in Abbott, Texas. It's interesting to note that the family doctor, F.D. Sims, misrecorded his birth date as April 30th. Willie's cousin Mildred came up with the name Hugh in remembrance of a recently deceased brother. Major John Nelson, his ancestor, fought in the American Revolution. In 1929, Willie's parents moved to Texas from Arkansas in pursuit of better job opportunities. His father was a mechanic, while his grandfather, William, was a blacksmith. The early years of Willie's family life were everything but stable. His father later remarried and moved, and his mother left soon after he was born. Their grandparents, who had a long history of music from their time in Arkansas, raised Willie and his sister Bobby. They encouraged the brothers' passion for music, with Willie's grandfather teaching him the basics and buying his first guitar when he was 6 years old. When they were very young, Willie and Bobby started singing gospel hymns in their neighborhood church, and Willie's talent was immediately apparent. At the age of 9, he joined the local band Bohemian Polka, and at 7, he wrote his first song. Along with other Abbott family members, Willie picked cotton throughout the summers, but he didn't enjoy the labor-intensive task. Rather, at the age of 13, he found his musical calling and started playing in bars, dance halls, and honky-tonks. Willie was a well-rounded high school student who played baseball, basketball, and football, in addition to being a future Farmers of America member and raising pigs. Meanwhile, he became a better musician. He played in a band called the Texans, which was led by his sister's husband, Bud Fletcher. The group gave Willie early exposure to a wider audience by playing honky-tonks and even hosting a Sunday morning radio show. Superstars like Bob Wills, Hank Williams, and Jimmy Rogers were among his musical influences. Following his graduation from Abbott High School in 1950, Willie joined the American military, Air Force. Unfortunately, because of back problems, he was freed after 9 months. After returning home in 1952, he married Martha Matthews and pursued a degree in agriculture at Baylor University. However, he was drawn to music, and by 1956 he had dropped out of school to focus on it full-time. Before relocating to Pleasanton, Texas with his family, he worked as a bouncer, part salesman, saddle maker, and even a tree trimmer. Despite his lack of expertise, he was employed as a DJ at KBOP. Willie used the station's recording equipment to record his first demos, The Storm Has Just Begun, and When I've Sung My Last Hillbilly Song in 1955. These early recordings laid the foundation for an amazing career, even if Sarg Records rejected him. Willie later performed in bars, worked for various radio stations, and even made a brief foray into the San Diego market. Willie faced many obstacles in spite of his perseverance. He hitched all the way to Portland, Oregon, where his mother lived, after failing to find a steady work in San Diego. He struggled to make expenses meet and slept in ditches along the way. But a kind truck driver eventually helped him get to Portland by lending him $10 for a bus ticket. Could music really be Willie's source of comfort given his challenging upbringing? And what terrible truth about his friend and fellow artist Kristofferson did he just reveal? Willie quickly found employment at Vancouver, Washington's KVAN radio station, where he also made an appearance on a local TV program. Leon Payne's Lumberjack was featured on the flip of his 1956 debut song, No Place for Me. Even though there were no repercussions from this record, Willie persisted. He performed in a number of Vancouver locations and kept up his job as a radio announcer. before moving to Springfield, Missouri, where he intended to be on the renowned Ozark Jubilee. He even tried his luck in a nightclub in Colorado.
That I interviewed you on about 5 years ago?
I think it might be.
Okay.
Yeah.
However, he took a job washing dishes after that didn't work out. He was disappointed and went back to Texas right away. Disillusioned by his artistic setbacks, Willie took a break from traveling after settling in Fort Worth following a brief excursion to Waco. He held a number of sales jobs during this time, including vacuum cleaner sales, Bible sales, and even a promotion to sales manager at Encyclopedia Americana. But his thoughts were never far from his calling. Willie moved to Houston with his family in 1958 after the birth of his son, Billy. He asked Larry Butler, a singer in the house band, whether he would buy a song when he stopped by the Esquire Ballroom on the way. Butler did not own Mr. Record Man, but he did grant Willie a job at the club 6 nights a week and lent him $50 to rent an apartment. This job gave Willie a fresh start. He began working as a DJ and played frequently after renting an apartment in Pasadena, Texas. He put out 2 singles for D Records during this time, The Storm Has Just Begun and Man with the Blues. In addition, Willie started teaching guitar at Paul Buskirk's music school. He is well known for selling one of his pieces, Family Bible, to Buskirk for $50 before taking $150 for Nightlife. Claude Gray recorded Family Bible, which was a hit by 1960. Willie took another chance and moved to Nashville, Tennessee to pursue a career as a composer, but he still had bigger plans. Nashville's initial resistance to accepting Willie didn't stop him. He often visited Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, a well-liked songwriter's hotspot close to the Grand Ole Opry. He met Hank Cochran there, who gave him the contact information for Pamper Music, Ray Price's publishing house. Foreign Young recorded Hello Walls after witnessing Willie play it, and the song's success in 1961 marked the beginning of Willie's songwriter career. Willie's ability is showcased in Nightlife, which was also recorded by Ray Price. In August of that year, Willie was recording in Nashville after signing with Liberty Records. Willingly and Touch Me, his first 2 singles, made it to the top. He moved to California to work for Pamper Records after getting married to Carly in Las Vegas in 1963, but he left soon after to start his own musical career. In April 1965, he recorded his first RCA album, Country Willie, his own songs after purchasing a home close to Nashville. He became acquainted with Waylon Jennings, who would play a pivotal role in his career, and joined the Grand Ole Opry that same year. Willie established the Record Men, a supporting group made up of great musicians like David Zettner, Paul English, Jimmy Day, and Johnny Bush, and his successes stayed in the top 25 for a number of years. But by 1970, he was losing money due to touring, so he got a divorce from Carly. He interpreted the destruction of his Ridgetop Ranch by fire in December as a hint to start over. After marrying Connie Kopke and moving to a ranch outside of Bandera, Texas, Willie recorded the top 30 hit song I'm a Memory in 1971. Despite some challenges along the way, his unique style and storytelling started to draw admirers from all walks of life. Willie Nelson recorded Mountain Dew, his last RCA single, around the end of April 1972. With a suggestion that they wouldn't otherwise distribute his most recent work, RCA requested him to extend his contract early. Even though he still had time left on his contract, Willie took the drastic decision to retire from music because he was frustrated by the poor sales of his records, especially Yesterday's Wine. He moved to Austin, Texas, where his passion was rekindled by the vibrant, free-spirited music scene. His unique fusion of jazz, folk, and country music was well received by the Austin scene, and he soon gained a local following. Willie played on the last day of the 3-day country music festival, Dripping Springs Reunion, in March. Even though fewer people showed out than anticipated, Willie was motivated to start his own festival, which would eventually become a yearly occasion. He therefore started the traditional 4th of July picnic the following year, which has persisted to this day. Willie thought it was time to record again after regaining his rhythm. In order to secure Willie's release from RCA for $14,000, he hired Neil Rishan as his manager. Rishan then made Willie the first country performer to sign a breakthrough contract with Atlantic Records, which paid $250,000 annually. In February 1973, Willie returned to the New York City studio to record Shotgun Willie with a new band, The Family. Despite receiving excellent reviews, Upon its May release, the album did not instantly become a commercial success. Shotgun Willie, on the other hand, was a bold new direction for Willie, who subsequently said, "That album was like clearing my throat." Willie's following album, Phases and Stages, was released in 1974 and addressed the topic of divorce, drawing from his own experiences. The CD included both the male and female viewpoints, which was a new idea at the time. Let's now examine Kristofferson's early life and ascent to fame before delving into Willie's most recent heartbreaking revelation about his close friend. Lars Henry Kristofferson, a U.S. military officer, and Marianne Kristofferson were the parents of Kristoffer Kristofferson, who was born in Brownsville, Texas, eventually becoming a major general in the Air Force after serving in the Army Air Corps. It was highly encouraged for young Chris to follow in his father's military career, therefore he spent his early years traveling all the time. His family eventually relocated to San Mateo, California. After completing San Mateo High School in 1954, Chris went on to Pomona College to further his dream of becoming a writer. He was praised for his early work, which included 2 articles in the Atlantic Monthly, Gone Are the Days, which tackled issues of race and identity, and The Rock, which was about a naturally occurring rock structure that resembled a lady. His genius was immediately apparent. At the age of 17, Chris secured a summer position with a dredge contractor on the isolated Pacific island of Wake Island. He subsequently called it the hardest job I've ever had. During his time at Pomona College, Chris received national notoriety for his athletic accomplishments in track, rugby, and football. The Claremont College's rugby club, which is still in operation today, was founded with his assistance. He received summa cum laude and was admitted to Phi Beta Kappa after graduating with a degree in literature in 1958. Chris cited Frederick Sontag, a philosophy professor, as one of his most significant mentors in a 2004 interview. He accepted an honorary Doctor of Fine Arts degree from Pomona College in 1973, accompanied by Rita Coolidge and Johnny Cash. Chris attended Merton College at Oxford University after being awarded a Rhodes Scholarship. He continued to play rugby, began writing songs, and earned a blue in boxing when he was in England. Chris hoped this would launch his music career. But as we all know, his path to fame was far from done. He met fellow Rhodes Scholar and poet Michael Fried, and with the assistance of his manager Larry Parnes, he recorded under the stage name Chris Carson, positioning himself as a Yank at Oxford. Hold on tight as we reveal Willie Nelson's very personal and heartbreaking truth about Kris Kristofferson, which strengthens their amazing bond and shared history. It wasn't easy for Kris Kristofferson to become a famous singer or musician, especially after his family encouraged him to take a more traditional path. Following family custom, Chris married his college sweetheart, Fran Beer, after graduating with a Bachelor of Arts in English Literature in 1960. In 1961, however, he enlisted in the U.S. due to pressure from his family. He rose through the Army's ranks and became a skilled captain and helicopter pilot. He even formed a band while he was in West Germany, but it wasn't enough to satiate his growing musical interest. Eventually, Chris reached a pivotal point. He decided to leave the Army completely to pursue music full-time, even though he was assigned to teach English at the prestigious West Point. His ties to his family were broken by this choice, and they avoided him since they thought he had given up everything they held dear. Chris would later look back on his time in the military with pride, and in 2003 he was even named a Veteran of the Year. Despite the challenges of his journey, Chris remained committed to his goals. After serving in the Army, Chris relocated to Nashville in 1965 to seek a career as a songwriter. But success did not come right away. To support himself and cover his son's medical expenses, he took on odd jobs. In 1968, his first marriage ended in divorce. During this period, Chris met June Carter while working as a janitor at Columbia Recording Studios. He asked her to bring Johnny Cash one of his demo cassettes. At first, Cash set it aside, but Chris wouldn't give up. When Chris famously made a helicopter landing in Johnny Cash's yard, the singer was forever changed. Chris then confirmed that, according to certain reports, he never showed there with records in one hand and a beer in the other, despite the fact that this occurrence became well known. However, the wager paid off when Cash heard Sunday Morning coming down and was so affected that he decided to record it, which went on to win Song of the Year at the 1970 Country Music Association Awards. At last, Chris's songwriting career was flourishing. His songs, including Me and Bobby McGee and Vietnam Blues, were becoming popular at this time. His reputation as a songwriter increased as more musicians covered his tunes. Janis Joplin, who had dated Chris for a short time, helped drive Me and Bobby McGee to the top of the charts following her tragic death. This song became a cross-genre smash, as did others like Help Me Make It Through the Night. In 1971, Chris gained recognition as a performer after being introduced to the Newport Folk Festival crowd by Johnny Cash. In that same year, he debuted as an actor in Dennis Hopper's The Last Movie and released his second album, The Silver-Tongued Devil and I. He kept putting out records, and his fourth album, Jesus Was a Capricorn, which featured the hit song Why Me, sold over 1 million copies in 1972. Chris proceeded to perform in movies like Blade, starring Wesley Snipes, and Payback, starring Mel Gibson, despite losses in Hollywood, including the 1980 box office failure of Heaven's Gate. Let's review their shared history as we get closer to sharing Willie Nelson's heartbreaking news about Chris. Willie and Chris were part of the legendary band The Highwaymen, which also featured Waylon Jennings and Johnny Cash. Collectively, they stood for the outlaw country movement, breaking with the Nashville sound and creating their own distinctive country music styles. With hits like Highwayman at the top of the charts, their 3 major albums from 1985 to 1995 became genre classics. Beyond music, Willie and Chris shared a unique bond as Highwaymen members. The outlaw country movement was influenced, motivated, and supported by them. Renowned for their original lyrics and genuine sound, Willie and Chris have left behind legacies that will endure for decades. Willie just shared a heartbreaking truth about his friend Chris, one that reflects the admiration and sense of loss that marked their amazing journey together. The term Highwayman was not officially used for this early idea, though. In addition to the 4 primary artists, Kris Kristofferson, Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, and Johnny Cash, Johnny Rodriguez provided Spanish vocals for the song Deporte from their album Highwayman. They even appeared together in the 1986 film Stagecoach. It's interesting to note that another folk group from the 1950s and 1960s went by the moniker The Highwaymen, and they even filed a lawsuit over it in 1990. The dispute was resolved by the country supergroup, who acknowledged that the folk band was the rightful owner of the name, but permitted both groups to use it. Both groups played together in a historic concert in Hollywood in 1990, which was a turning point in the history of music. When the country quartet first formed in 1985, they had no formal name, but Nelson, Jennings, Cash, and Kristofferson were all listed on their debut album, Highwaymen. Their cover of Guy Clark's Desperados Waiting for a Train made it into the top 20, and Jimmy Webb's title single was a number 1 country blockbuster. This widely popular record was produced by Chips Moman. With singles like Silver Stallion hitting the top 40, they got back together for Highwayman 2 in 1990. The CD, which was once more produced by Moman, was nominated for a Grammy for Best Country Vocal Collaboration. The Road Goes On Forever, the group's 1995 last album, was produced by Don Was. It included a cover of a song by Robert Earl Keen and their hit song It's What It Is. To honor their enduring influence, a 10th anniversary edition of this record was released in 2005. Let's first talk about Willie Nelson's deep love for Kris Kristofferson as a songwriter before delving into the awful reality of his life. Willie was asked to choose the greatest songwriter in history during a heartfelt interview. Legends like Billy Joe Shaver, Hank Williams, and Merle Haggard were recognized by Willie, but Kris Kristofferson was the most notable. Chris is unique because to his everlasting melodies and meaningful, lovely words, which Willie has often praised. Over the years, Willie and Chris formed an unbreakable bond built on friendship, music, and respect. Legendary songwriter Willie composed classic songs like Funny How Time Slips Away and Crazy, which Patsy Cline famously recorded. But he lavishes Chris with accolades, calling him the greatest lyricist of all time, a statement that says a lot about their relationship. During that same meeting, Willie talked about his famous guitar trigger and reminisced on his love of Hawaii and Texas. He said, "Texas is my home, but Maui is also wonderful," expressing how much he cherishes both locations. The sad reality is that according to his family spokesperson, Evie McFarland, Kristofferson passed away peacefully at home in Maui, Hawaii at the age of 88. Although the cause of death was not disclosed, Kris had ceased recording and performing in 2021 and had only made sporadic appearances after that. At Willie Nelson's 90th birthday celebration in 2023, he sang one of his last songs, "Loving Her Was Easier Than Anything I'll Ever Do Again," which is a Kris smash and a Willie favorite. There was much more to Kristofferson than just music. He was a collegiate football star, a rugby player, a Golden Gloves fighter, and a great storyteller. The story of Kris landing a helicopter in his front yard to do a Sunday morning coming down demo was one that Johnny Cash loved to share. The incident just added to the mythology, even though Kris later clarified that Cash wasn't at home and wasn't holding a beer. Fred Foster, the founder of Monument Records, suggested the title for one of Kris's most well-known songs, "Me and Bobby McGee," based on the name of his secretary. Then, inspired by Fellini's La Strada, Kris penned it as a tale of love and loss. Just days before her tragic death, Kris's close friend Janis Joplin famously changed Bobby McGee into a song about a man before recording it. Her performance solidified the song's place in rock and country music history by becoming a posthumous number one blockbuster. As a member of the Highwaymen band, Kris got to play with his idols, Cash, Jennings, and Nelson. Being friends and collaborators with them was an honor he never took for granted. As he once remarked, "It was like seeing my face on Mount Rushmore." Fans of the Highwaymen consider their outstanding musical achievements and the close relationship between these legendary country musicians now that only Willie Nelson is still alive. Through his songs, Kris has left a lasting legacy, and his relationship with Willie is highly admired. How do you feel about Kris Kristofferson and Willie Nelson's historic relationship? Thank you for watching, and please leave your thoughts in the space provided for comments below. Remember to subscribe to and like our channel. To view more incredible tales from your favorite celebs, click the next video that appears on your screen. See you there!